It's a beautiful bacon day, Cookie Crusaders. Today we're going to be talking about a risky PvP team that you guys can try. And I say that because it has no healers. Now, yes, it does have the monocle healing treasure, but with that treasure, it takes a long time to activate. So, if you're fighting against teams that are very fast, have a lot of burst damage, can stop your skills to where you can't get enough damage resistance from Wildberry, these are all going to be problematic things. So do take that into consideration if you do want to run this team. In addition, we're going to talk about the toppings in a moment, but let me talk about why we chose this specific team. So Purple Yam with the new Magic Candy, doing some crazy things between the attack speed, the damage resistance, the debuff resistance, and the healing warrior spirit. All of it's really fun things. So Purple Yam technically can heal himself at a certain point if you get to that point in the battle, but if you don't, you actually won't heal at all with Purple Yam. The important thing really though is that this is an attack speed team because the robes are going to specifically be applied to 2 characters, and the way I have it set up, Purple Yam is not one of those characters because Purple Yam will actually get an attack speed buff from the Magic Candy, which applies after the robes, so that way the other 2 cookie users still get the attack robe. So we technically have 3 cookies getting attack speed buffs at the beginning of the match. And so that's a little trick that we're doing there. So if we go over the toppings, the main thing that we have to take away here is that all these toppings can be better. Granted, Wildberry has pretty great damage resistance, but none of the other stats are really shining much to where they could be. If I could bring it up more, I would specifically like to have the cooldown and the attack speed up on Wildberry. Now the reason for that is that the animation takes quite a long time for Wildberry to get that reflection pushback. And yes, even though the lower the attack speed, the more time you have to build up the stacks to reflect back, that means also the more time that you have to specifically wait to deal damage back with Wildberry. So it's a give and take kind of ability. I personally want it more activating as quick as possible, as much as possible, with the highest amount of damage resistance to make sure that they are just getting damage out. That's the whole goal with Wildberry in this team. And damage resistance buffs to our other members just for a little extra survivability. Next we have Werewolf Cookie. So this one we're running 45% crit, 8.3% attack speed, and then crit resist was the next best thing we could get. If I could get the perfect stats here, at least the way I would want to run this build, I would run a 15% attack speed, because that's max you can get as a substat. I would run the 30% damage resist, and then the maximum critical percentage. Reason is that as Werewolf attacks, the faster his attack speed, the more damage he is doing. Like, I've proven that in so many different iterations that I've run him, it just works really great. But if you combine that with critical percentages, then you're getting really heavy hits each time. So you can shred through a lot of enemies if you continue to get those attacks. And so with that build in mind, that's the whole reason I want to get those stats on Werewolf Cookie. So in time, that's going to be the build, is getting him to that point. But this is the best we could conjure for right now. Purple Yam we run a lot of different toppings on because there's a lot of different ways to run him because of the Magic Candy right now. But for this specific build, we're just going damage resistance. It's not great. We only have 23.9%. Could definitely be better. And if we were to change any other stats, I would actually get rid of the attack speed stat completely because he gets it from the Magic Candy, so there's really no reason for that. And I would get rid of the critical resistance and the amplify buff because they make minimal differences. We had a couple people in our guild already test the amplify buff. It gave him a little extra healing, but that's really it. So it didn't actually affect the buffs that were to be given by the Magic Candy. So it seems that the buffs are being applied to the Magic Candy, which then the user is using, rather than the buffs being applied to the cookie directly that can be amplify buffed. So I don't want amplify buff on him at the end point when I get that chance and min-max the toppings. Instead, just damage resistance for survivability, attack percentage just for maximum amount of hits, and then preferably critical percentage so that it's even chunkier. Next, I don't know when I'm going to change the toppings on Dark Cacao. You've probably seen this specific topping set 100 times now. It's a good topping set. I like the stats on it. There's not too much more I can min-max on him, but in time, maybe we can get it just a little bit more refined. And then, last but not least, Caramel Arrow. Now, this one's a little tough because I don't have many caramel toppings yet. I'm building them still. The main focus is, of course, attack speed. Now, we only have 30.9% here. We can actually get a maximum of 51%. Yes, you do have a max amount of arrow stacks that come from Caramel Arrow for attack speed, so you do hit a point where attack speed loses its value for the secondary skill for Caramel Arrow. However, when you speed up that animation and you have base attacks going faster, which archers already have high base attacks, you're still actually pushing out a lot of damage. So these caramel toppings are on par with the critical toppings, specifically for Caramel Arrow, and that's why I'm running them. If I could min-max the stats on this one, I would have the 51% attack speed, I would have 30% damage resist if I could get it there, and then I would have a cooldown of 10%, because 10% cooldown and 51% attack speed means that Caramel Arrow is going to shred the battlefield as much as she can, and it's just absolutely insane. So that is the topping discussion and the understanding of that. And I'm going to go ahead and show you a battle with a following team member that has a meta team, has high level treasures, and a high level power. Granted, their trophy count's a little lower in the arena. Maybe they just don't play nearly as much as I do, so I'm not going to really judge them on that. But they have the level 70s. They have an ascended parfait. It's at least a relatively level playing field as far as what we're battling. And technically they have speed too since they have Caramel Arrow, but they have the insignia. So their team is more focused on healing, where we're just more focused on speed. So let's go into it. So the whole idea here is that Wildberry takes the brunt of the damage, giving the damage resistance to our team. Werewolf hits and gets those stuns in with the adjustments that came out recently. Our team is so tanky that they should at least last long enough for that first monocle activation like they just did. Caramel Arrows in the back providing all the heavy hits, which being a front character and then in the back actually gives her more protection. Sometimes she dies, sometimes she doesn't. It really depends on the team that they're fighting. But you can see Purple Yam still alive and still really pushing the bar. So that magic candy and those adjustments that they made post-update, absolutely amazing for Purple Yam. And we'll go into the stats to show that too. Same with Werewolf. Granted, Werewolf doesn't have a magic candy to take Werewolf to another level, but it's still doing good. So even though 834,000 was the damage on Werewolf here, that's because there wasn't really a lot of targets. So Werewolf does really good against summoner teams and any team that has a lot of bodies, because those attacks hit those front lines very, very well. So paired well with Sorbet Cookie. Now Purple Yam here taking almost as much damage as Wildberry. Obviously Wildberry does great on reflection. It's like a 1-for-1 trade back of the damage that comes at Wildberry. So it's hard to match Wildberry in some cases, but Purple Yam did a really good job. We don't even have Purple Yam ascended yet. We just have the magic candy at, I believe, level 18 currently. And then of course Caramel Arrow doing some great damage. However, they had debuff resistance thanks to Parfait. They had their Wildberry helping block out those stacks of arrows from our side as well. So there's many reasons why our Caramel Arrow wasn't dominating the battle in this time, but that's the whole explanation of what was really kind of going on here. And of course Cloud of Cream on their side too technically takes out our Wildberry and invalidating Wildberry if Wildberry was in the front position, but instead Werewolf was in that top left position. So Cloud of Cream was specifically directed at Werewolf, so if there was any more damage that could have come from Werewolf, it would have been because Cloud of Cream would have been on their team, and we would have had a chance to push even further beyond. Now if we go to the damage received, you can see Werewolf actually took the chunk of it. That's just more proof that Cloud of Cream was dealing the most damage here to Werewolf, and that's where the focus was. Everyone else took a relatively healthy amount of damage as well. And then healing, even though Parfait got 1.5 million healing, and Purple Yam never hit the Spirit Warrior Ascension, that was the only healing that happened in this battle, was just Parfait. Now granted, healing received, because of the monocle we have, That's why that's the lineup on our side for the healing receive, because we did have the monocle activate since our team was tanky and chunky enough to survive for the first monocle activation. I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments in the feedback. Do you think this team even looks fun just because there's no healers? You're just burst damaging through the house, kicking down doors, taking names. It's really cool. And it's cool to see something that Purple Yam works really well in, as well as Werewolf. I'm using 2 cookies here that are technically cookies that were disregarded before completely. And they're making a presence, and I like to see it. But I love your opinions and feedback as always. And thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day.